Welcome ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chronicles here on this Destiny 2 video, and today we're going to be taking a look at my top 10 Warlock Exotics in Destiny 2. And of course, as always, it's completely subjective, based on my opinion, the way I like to play as my Warlock, as well as the opinion of my buddy Zoomzy, my PvP expert, link to his Twitch in the description down below. And of course, as always, I have made a spreadsheet for this video that is fully public for you guys to use, with all my PvE and PvP rankings for everything, as well as my recommendations and mods. And as always, you can find that at my Discord server, and then link in the description down below, in the channel #SpreadsheetStocks. And just as a thank you for watching this video, there's cute animals on screen right now. And that's just something that I like to do. Instead of asking people for likes or subscribe or whatever, I often just put cute animals on the screen and let you decide what you want to do. And of course, watch the whole video, because at some point during the middle, there's going to be some special something that you're not going to want to miss. Moving on to the main section of the video, let's go ahead and take a deep dive into the spreadsheet. As you can see on screen right now, this is my spreadsheet and all of its goodness. The biggest and most important part is going to be this column J and K, where you can see the ranks for PvE and PvP for every single different exotic in the game for the Warlocks, and of course you can navigate to previous seasons if you want to see those as well. Obviously, I am working on the Hunter and Titan ones as we go through the season. Now, as a blanket statement, the top 10 pretty much hasn't changed at all. The only change is that Ophidian Aspect moved up because of the nerf to Quick Draw. It became a lot more relevant. On top of that, there were a lot of changes to the stasis subclasses, albeit the Warlock receiving the least nerfs. The big thing there is that it made some of the other subclasses, like the Void stuff, the Arc stuff, and of course Solar, a little bit more attractive, a little bit more viable, but it wasn't enough to really change the top 10, and for the most part, you just kind of switched from one thing to the other with the same requirements. Whereas on Stasis, you really wanted your freezing melee ability, and then on Solar Dawnblade, you really wanted your Celestial Fire melee ability. Right, so in the main section of this video, I'm going to go through all of the non-ranked items first, talking about why they're not as highly ranked, why they're not part of the top 10, and then work my way backwards through the top 10, talking about why certain things are part of the meta. Now, what's really important here is that you should understand there are certain things that are not highly ranked that may be perfect for you. Apotheosis Veil, giving you ability energy after your super, and giving your allies class ability stuff. But in my mind, it's not really much of a game changer. Astrocide Verse definitely solves all of the issues you could have with Blink, Void becoming a little bit stronger in proxy of Stasis becoming weaker. However, it's a very high skill floor, high skill ceiling exotic. If a pro uses this, you should be scared. Crown of Tempest, giving you a number of bonuses to all of your Arc stuff. However, Arc is not really that strong, and most people prefer Geomag and Attunement of Control in general for both PvP and PvE. Dawn Chorus, a lot of people really like this exotic because it is specific to Daybreak, and the only one that's specific to Daybreak, but the bonuses don't feel like they do much. The damage bonus on projectiles and the extra burn, not really changing much in your damage overall. The best benefit I see here is extra melee energy from causing a burn, which is as easy as throwing a solar grenade. However, there are so many other melee-based exotics that do this better. Things like Eye of Another World, or the overflow charging from Claws of Amakara. Felwinter's Helm actually did get a buff this season, not only making it so it can be used with stasis, but also the burst happens on the target rather than your body, making it a lot more viable of hitting more enemies without being right in everyone's faces. However, that only weakens and smoke bombs enemies, making them more viable for a 2-tap on a 120, which is nice, but not enough compared to other melee exotics. If we get Solar Plexus with Celestial Fire, this could be pretty crazy, but until then, it's very averaging. Skull of Dharamkara, very fun, gives you your Nova Bomb more often, definitely underrated by a lot of other people, but it does not help with your neutral game like Controverse or Nezrex does. The Stag, you would most likely use the Stag if you expect to die a lot. So if you see an enemy in Crucible using it, it's because they expect to die a lot. And in PvE, gives you that rift to help you revive, but in the higher level play, that timer on your death makes it so that rift isn't useful. Verity's Brow, an exotic that was close to being in the top 10, a number of bonuses to your grenade in a lot of weird different ways, as well as bonus to your teammate. However, it does require you to get kills, and to get a lot more stacks with it, you need very fast kills on the high level that does fall apart. Getaway Artist, a very fun exotic, giving you that extra, very powerful Arc Soul, which does work with the auto turret from No Time to Explain, but again, Arc is not that strong. Necrotic Grip, more of a height-based exotic. It's not really that good, and it's actually only with your melee or with Thorn, and may end up getting a little bit better with the Corruption subclass Darkness thing that we're gonna get in Witch Queen, but for right now, it's kind of a gimmick. The Sunbracers, infinite solar grenades is a lot of fun, and it's not that hard with Celestial Fire considering it is ranged, but it is melee-based, and melees do fall off sharply in the higher level. Speaking of which, Winter's Guile, melee kills for melee damage, does not stack multiplicatively anymore, so it's not really that much. Chromatic Fire, a very fun and somewhat gimmicky exotic, allowing you to get Dragonfly explosions in your subclass type with kinetic weapons that can't usually get it, and does trigger double explosions with things with Firefly, for example Ace of Spades or Fabrink. However, just like that, what I was going to say is that Firefly gives you a solar explosion, which does work with the Warmind Cell stuff, and we have a lot more weapons with Firefly with Vault of Glass. Mantle of Battle Harmony, last season's exotic, which was theorized to be pretty crazy, seems more like an above average exotic now. And on top of that, last season actually didn't work in PvP, the only 0 I've ever given for an exotic, and this season we found that it actually does work after the patch. In essence, you get your super a little bit faster from your kills, and you get a Rampage style bonus, 20% for 3 seconds after a kill when you get your super, which does allow you to get a Rampage style bonus on weapons that don't have Rampage or double stack this bonus, but there are so many other player damage bonuses like High Energy Fire, Empowering, that may trump this in the end. Sanguine Alchemy, one of the worst exotics in the game. Pausing your rift's duration by getting kills while in your rift is not really something I care about, and it doesn't work with the well. Starfire Protocol actually did get a buff this season by proxy of stasis getting worse, because the best benefit I saw from this is using it with the healing grenades of Attunement of Grace and giving yourself an overshield. In PvP, getting frozen didn't matter if you had an overshield, and with less stasis, it's more viable. And I kind of consider this as a kind of alternative to Phoenix Protocol if you don't have it, because you would use it with Attunement of Grace, giving you more opportunities to get more grenades. Storm Dancer's Brace. Getting more damage with Storm Chance doesn't really change much because it's not that strong in the first place. And you're forced to arc stuff. First Wizard Radius. If you're looking to get your Rift as often as possible, this is probably your best bet. It's very easy to get surrounded or be around enemies, but getting more Rifts doesn't change much. Wings of Sacred Dawn. A very cool and flashy exotic, and in a pro's hands will be very strong, but a very high skill floor, high skill ceiling exotic. And especially so this season with Dawnblade being a little bit more prevalent. After that, we have the Boots of the Assembler, the newest exotic from this season with an interesting bonus on it that I actually do like, but I do consider it just kind of average to above average. If you've never heard of it, whenever you're standing in a healing rift, an empowering rift, or your well, it shoots out noble seekers to your allies, giving them healing and empowering. Now here's the special thing about it, is it actually gives you 35% more weapon damage instead of the regular 25 from empowering rifts, which is on par with the Word of Dawn bubble. So that means in raids, you could just have a Warlock with well, and that will shoot out that extra 35% damage bonus, and all of your Titans can be on Falling Star slams, which will massively increase your DPS. And I know that the main argument would be, well, what about Lunafaction boots? Honestly, with the number of auto-loading weapons these days, double slug, shotties, and anarchy, we don't often need maximum reload speed as often as we used to. It really is dependent on what the boss is, how close we can get to it if we need maximum reload speed. And this can kind of be an alternative to either Phoenix Protocol or Lunafaction, depending on how you'd want to use it. But again, not that massively strong. And finally, we have Promethean Spurt, an exotic that's probably one of the worst in the entire game because it puts rifts, empowering, and healing everywhere after you're killing everybody with Dawnblade. And I really don't know how this would really change much in the game, because you're killing everybody with your Dawnblade, so why have all these rifts? Moving on, let's go ahead and get into the top 10 and the honorable mentions. First up, let's talk about the Karnstein Armlets. A lot of people would probably assume this would deserve a top 10 slot, and it is actually a very good exotic for both PvE and PvP. If you've never heard of it, kills instantly restore around half of your bar and give you around 8 seconds of rift level healing. And that is actually really good. That allows you to survive a lot better in multi-enemy fights. However, it used to be a lot better in the 150 hand cannon meta because it would change the number of shots it took to kill you by 1 or 2 shots. Whereas in the current meta, where 120 hand cannons are still strong, you're more likely to still be killed by 3 headshots from a 120 hand cannon. And by proxy will not change that much in most fights. However, if we ever see Solar Plexus come back in the artifact mods, Celestial Fire will become even more powerful, making this exotic more powerful than it is currently. So definitely something that will hop in the top 10 for sure when that comes around. Coming in at number 10, we have the Geomag Stabilizers, a very fun and definitely fan favorite exotic that's being used in PvP and PvE alike. For the PvP side of things, first of all, for the subclass component of it, that Chaos Reach laser is very good at killing enemy supers, enemy enemies at very long distances, and can be deactivated early to get a lot of your super back, usually around 50% if you do it quickly. And then the Exotic allows you to sprint off that last 10%, which means you only really have to get 40% of your super after getting the first one. On top of that, damaging enemies with Chaos Reach extend the duration, but in PvP it's not going to really change that much. The biggest reason why it's stuck at a 7.5 is that most of the benefit you get is built into the subclass. You get to deactivate it early for super energy is the biggest part about it, and not the Exotic itself. And that's why it's at number 10 and not higher up on the list, although you'd use it probably more often than some of these others. For the PvE side of things, the more valuable part is that it lasts longer as you're hitting an enemy. So if you're hitting a single target, it lasts twice as long, and that is very good DPS, a pretty good total ammo damage as well. However, from my opinion, I think Falling Star, Celestial Fire are safer and higher damaging options, because holding yourself in mid-air exposed to enemies with only a 40% damage resistance is quite dangerous. But still a very good Exotic and something I'd highly recommend. Up next at number 9, we have the Lunafaction Boots, basically the quintessential Warlock Exotic for raids. You allow yourself and all of your allies to have maximum reload speed in your rifts or your wells, and you also double their range, which allows slug shotguns to get you a little bit further, allowing for certain boss fights like the DSC or Atheon to be a lot more viable and get that maximum damage. Now, something that I alluded to before is that more often than not, we'll have options that don't require us to reload. Things like Anarchy plus double slug shotguns, both with auto-loading, kind of solve that problem before the boss fight is over. However, it's still very necessary for certain boss fights and certain raid stuff. We often will need at least one Warlock with well in our team to have that work. It's like that cousin that's rich and you just don't want to talk to him because he's a dick, but you just have to because he's family and he buys you ice cream. You know what I'm saying? Coming up at number 8 on this list, we have the Claws of Hamkara. Probably going to be one of the most common exotics to see on Warlocks in the Crucible, because again, it works with Stasis, it works with Solar, and honestly could also work with Void. And as I mentioned many times before, having an additional charge doesn't seem like it's going to change much, but allows for overflow charging, because you're not going to be using a certain ability immediately as you get it. So you get overflow charging, on average, increasing the number of melees you get around 50%. And especially considering that more people are going to be using either Stasis melees or Celestial Fire melees, this is a very popular, very useful exotic. And then in PvE side of things, obviously, the extra melee, what is that going to do? Coming up at number 7 on this list, we have the Aeon Soul. Still as disgusting as it used to be, it's still a very powerful option for PvE, even regardless if your teammates are or are not using the Aeon Cult Exotics, it still gives you a number of incredible bonuses, and even more bonuses if they do. Things like improving your weapon stuff for better handling, better stability. Things like super energy, class ability energy, and regular ability energy to you and all of your allies, giving your allies healing, giving them special and heavy ammo on finishers on certain enemies. It's kind of crazy. And again, I still think that the best thing you can get from it is the ability to spawn heavy ammo for your teammates by finishing a champion level enemy just by having this exotic. And that's it. It doesn't cost you super energy. It doesn't cost you ammo. It literally is just this exotic. They don't have to have Aeon, and you give them heavy ammo. And that is very powerful, because the biggest issue with heavies is they don't get ammo often, which is why so many special exotics are so powerful in PvE, because they have a very good economy. Up next, at number 6 on this list, we have the Eye of Another World, an exotic that I dangerously underrated for a long time because I didn't understand how it worked. If you didn't know, what it does is it increases your strength and your discipline by 30 points, on top of also increasing the regeneration speed of your rift. Not your recovery, but just the regeneration of your rift. Now, the reason why I didn't like it before is because I often had very high stats on a lot of those things, so it literally didn't change much. But if you have lower stats, especially considering that Stasis takes longer to charge all of the ability stuff, it is a lot more impactful. So if you can keep all of your strength and your discipline under 70 or at 70 or below, you're gonna get a big benefit from this. And it's also universal. Can be used on Stasis, on Celestial Fire. It can be used with, Chaos Reach. It can be used literally on everything. And that is very strong for PvP and decently strong in PvE. Up next at number 5, we have the Nezarec Sin, an exotic that's actually a universal exotic. Most people think it's only for void-based subclasses. It's actually universal because you only need to get void damage kills to increase your ability energy recharge rate. Now, initially, I thought this was much higher than it was because I usually use this with Devour because you can't use it with Controverse very well. And Devour innately gives you a lot of grenade energy back. This one only really gives you like 5% per kill, which is small, but it is noticeable and will change a decent amount. And again, is universal. You don't have to use it with Void. You can use it with Stasis in the Crucible. You can use it with literally all of the subclasses. As long as you're using a Void weapon to get kills, which is easy enough, and there's a lot of really strong Void in the meta right now, things like Bottom Dollar, Gnawing Hunger, Last Perdition, to name a few. And I want to highlight, it's very important. You do not have to inundate your loadout with Void-based stuff. You just have to have a dependable source of Void damage to get more Void stuff. I personally really like using this with a 2 minute of Hunger because it's one of the best things you can do with Devour, and I really think that a lot of people underrate Devour. An ability to just heal yourself up with kills is pretty nice. And right here in the middle of the video, just wanted to mention that I actually have a giveaway going on right now of an Astro A10 headset, a Blue Yeti microphone, link in the description down below on how to enter, which is free to enter. And of course, we're also going to put some cute animals on screen because I just wanted to say thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Truly, and I mean truly, without their help, I wouldn't be able to make these kinds of spreadsheets because they take around 10 to 20 hours every single week to figure out where the things have changed, to add in the new stuff, and the patrons on Patreon are making it possible for me to continue doing these spreadsheets because if I had to get a part-time job, I wouldn't be able to take the time to do this. So if you want to see them continue, please consider checking out my Patreon in the link in the description down below. Up next at number 4 today, we have the Ophidian Aspect. The only exotic that really moved in this current top 10, obviously things shifted behind it, but the only thing that really made a big move. And the biggest contributor to that is going to be the nerf to Quick Drop, especially considering how many things really depended on having that really high handling, things like snipers for example. Ophidian Aspect comes in the rear and really helps that out. That was probably a poor choice of words, but let's go for it. If you've never heard of it, it helps your weapons ready and reload very quickly, and your melee range is extended. On top of Warlocks already having an extra meter on their melee range, albeit a slower melee than the other two classes, really helps you get a surprise on your enemies on how far you can melee. On top of, again, solving the issue that was voided with Quick Drop. And something that's very important to acknowledge here is if you don't need to use dexterity and reloader on your gloves, you can use it for other things. To be honest, there's not much more to say about it. Ophidian Aspect is really nice, it is universal, it works, it's reliable, and if you haven't used it, you feel better when you do use it. Moving on to number 3 on this list, we have the Controverse Hold, one of my favorite exotics in the game, not only for the effectiveness and the scalability all the way through Grandmaster Nightfall, but also it just incredibly fun exotic. If you've never heard of it, you resist incoming damage while charging any of your Void Grenades, which can sometimes be the difference maker, but you can't sprint while you're doing that, and you also get extra damage, more improved grenade that also has bigger AoE whenever you hit enemies with this charged grenade. Now, it's important you understand it's hits, which scales very well. Regardless of your enemy, you're not required to get a kill with it. And you can combine this with other grenade stuff, like Ashes to Assets, which is part of the Artifact mod. That's a cheap 1-point mod. On top of another new mod right now, the Impulse Recycler, where grenade kills will give you grenade energy, and of course, if your grenade is doing more damage, bigger AoE, it's gonna do better at getting kills. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get Oppressive Darkness this season, which allows you to weaken enemies with your Void Grenades, which makes this pretty much a top-tier Grandmaster level, very commonly used exotic. But again, we got so many different things for grenades this season that just make it such a great option. Even without any of that stuff, I still consider it a top 3 Warlock exotic, and again, very fun. And to be honest, even though it is Void, and Void is not usually that good, a Nova Bomb will work no matter what you're doing, at no matter what difficulty, and the rest of the subclass is pretty alright. Coming up next at number 2, we have the Transversive Steps, and honestly, every time I see a movement-based exotic in the top 5, which is true on all 3 different classes, I scratch my head, because on paper, it doesn't seem like it's going to change that much, but moving fast does make a huge difference, and this is true across every shooter game. Lightweight in Call of Duty, or having a lightweight weapon in this game, or just having high mobility allows you to escape enemy gunfire, escape enemies, be harder to hit, and of course rush down your enemies a lot more efficiently. And on top of that, this exotic also has it kind of auto-loading, where you're sprinting with a weapon for a short amount of time, it automatically reloads it. Where if you have weapons that reload quite slowly, like 120 RPM hand cannons, or shotguns, or heavy machine guns, or if you just don't care about reloading, you really need to get somewhere quickly, it just solves that issue. And as I mentioned many times before, reload does drastically impact your ability to dish out damage. And if you're using Transversive Steps, maybe you don't need a hand cannon reloader on your 120 hand cannon because you can just sprint for 2 seconds. which allows you to use those points on something else. And then obviously for the PvE side of things, getting through a strike faster is always a big upside. You just feel better completing it faster, giving you more time to watch more videos from your favorite content creator. Alright. And finally, coming up at number 1, we have the Phoenix Protocol, the only exotic on the Warlocks list to get a 9 out of 10, and I think that it really definitely deserves it because it really changes a lot, especially in the highest level play. The one downside to it is it's not really that fun. Essentially, while getting kills in your Well of Radiance, you get more super energy, i.e. Well of Radiance. And right now, and as always has been, Well of Radiance is extremely powerful, making you virtually unkillable in a lot of circumstances, and also giving you weapon damage bonuses, and if you're healing or empowering your allies in it, you get more grenades and more rifts, and having that more often, especially in conjunction with an Ursa Titan, meaning you can have Well at like 100% uptime. And yes, there is the consideration that perhaps it might be better to have some other exotics that do something similar, things like Lunafaction Boots, or Boots of the Assembler, or maybe even the Mantle of Battle Harmony as some kind of replacement, but the Phoenix Protocol is the most consistent at guaranteeing, almost guaranteeing, that you're gonna have more rifts or more wells as often as you can have them. In the highest level play, I am always using a Phoenix Protocol well Warlock. At least one of us is usually using it because it's just so damn useful to be invincible. I don't know if this is getting clear to you. Being invincible is really useful. Near invincible, right? Because in Grandmasters you can still get 2-tapped, but like, it's so good. And if I haven't made it clear enough, thank you for watching all the way to this part of the video. It really means a lot to me, and it really helps with retention and the algorithm on YouTube. And of course, again, a special thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Again, without their help, a lot of these spreadsheets really wouldn't be possible. Specifically, I want to give a big thank you to Metabudu, Mom Dad, Dr. Strange, Joe Smith, Monday, Steve Bachmus, Raymond Showman, Uter Panther, Cole Sherman, and Casey Reagan for the support on Patreon. And that's going to be the end of it. Hope you guys did enjoy. My name is Chronic, and I will see you guys on the next one.